Bruchim Habayim, we are continuing on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, Hilchot Shabbat, Siman Resh Samech Gimel, within the halachot of Hadlakat Nerot Shabbat, and we are up to Seif Yud Aleph, and of Lamed Zayin, Amud Bet of the regular prints of Mishna Berura. Maran writes, Afal pi shelo hitpalelu hakahal adayin, even though that the kahal has not davened yet, im kadam hayachid veitpalel shel Shabbat mi be'od yom. If the yachid already did arvit of Shabbat, even though that is prior to sunset, chal alav kabbalat Shabbat. He already has accepted against his will the Shabbat. Ve'asur ba'asiyat melacha. He can no longer do any melacha. Ve'afilu im omer she'eno rotzeh lekabel Shabbat. Even if he says that I am not planning to accept Shabbat, I'm just going to daven arvit and then drive back home for kiddush. He can't do that because once it's an oxymoron. You can't say mekadesh Shabbat in your tefillah and call it a night, so to speak, without accepting Shabbat. Says Maran Seif Yud Bet, Im rova kahal kibilu alim. This is very important and very practical. If the majority of the kahal accepted on themselves Shabbat, hamiut nimshachim acharehem al korcham, then the minority is, even against their will, dragged after the majority, and it is Shabbat for them without them even accepting it. So says the Mishna Berura over here in Seif Yud Bet, Ve'im rov ha'kahal lo hayu bebet knesset, but if the majority of the tzibur is not found in bet knesset, and nimshachin achar hamiut, then they're not drawn after the minority. Says the Mishna Berura, v'chen be'ir shesh ba batei knesiot harbe. Same is with a shul, with a city that has many shuls. Ein achad nimshechet achar chavirta. One community within the city is not drawn after the other communities. Each community has its own rules and regulations, has its own majority and minority. Even if one of the communities is comprised from the majority of the Jews in the city, in other words, imagine you have a massive community that has 60% of the community, the Jews in the community there, and then there are 4 other shuls that they have each one 10%. That would be still not mechayev the small shuls to go after the large shul. Each one of those communities in the town, they stand their own, they hold their own. Aval im oseh minyan bebeto. But if you have a house minyan, you're not considered your own community. It's a private backyard minyan. Afilu minyan kavua, even if it's a weekly minyan that happens every week, batel etzel harov. It is nullified to the rov. So imagine if you have all of the minyanim in town that they are doing early Shabbat. In summer, everyone is doing early Shabbat, and then you have a house minyan that wants to do late. Can't do that. Can't do. If everyone, a majority of the town has accepted, and you're just a house minyan, the house minyan is not considered as a community in the town, and therefore it will be batel. But if you have a kavua bet knesset, a kavua community, not just a backyard minyan or some sort of happening house or something. If you have a kavua community in the town that is doing late, then there's what to be talked about. Now this is something that a lot of literature nowadays has been written on this. The reason for this, writes the Ravya, and it's brought in the Poskim, is because of agudot. You don't want to have different communities doing different things. So one of them is already Shabbat, they're singing the songs of Shabbat, and the other ones are driving to shul. Like you don't want to have a town that, it looks bizarre when some people are doing melacha and the majority of town already has accepted Shabbat. He says that's the reason, right? In Sefer Be'er Eshek, also in his tshuva, seems to be indicating the same thing, that this is like a Isur of Lo Titkodedu, which is mentioned and discussed in Masechet Yevamot, Daf Yud Gimel Yudalit, and Maran Rav Shmuel Wozner in his Tshuvot Shevet HaLevin, in one of the later Chalakim in Chelek Tet, he writes that this is a zilzul, it's a disgrace, it's a disrespect to those who already have accepted Shabbat. The majority of community have accepted Shabbat, and then you're driving, going happy and jolly. That's disrespectful. The majority of the community have already accepted upon themselves Shabbat, and therefore you have to be respectful to that. Now, if you go on Erev Shabbat to a different city, right, then you're not necessarily drawn after the Bet Knesset that you usually daven in your own town, because you're not in town anymore. Now you follow the community that you happen to be spending time with this Shabbat, even though that in Masechet Psachim, in the Sugya of Bnei Bishan and Daf Nun, there is a whole discussion of Makom Shehalach Lesham, Makom Sheba, a place that you come from, a place that you go to. Even though that you have that, still over here it's a very practical thing. Every Shabbat it's based on where you find yourself. So even if you're on a trip in a different city, you will be following the majority of that city. Now, that the minority follows the majority is only for doing melacha, right? You can't do melacha after the majority has accepted Shabbat. But for davening mincha, right? So long as you haven't said Baruch Hu, you haven't accepted Shabbat, you can still daven mincha. You can't do melacha, but you can still daven. It doesn't stop you from being able to daven mincha, but you can't drive to shul, right? You can't light candles or whatnot. That is asur, but davening mincha, so long as you haven't accepted Shabbat with saying Baruch Hu, you still could daven mincha. Now, how about if you haven't heard shofar yet, right? You haven't heard shofar in the second day of Rosh Hashanah.
This year it will be like that.
Right? Exactly. And it's becoming Shabbat now. So if you could technically have a scenario, and this happens every year because there are people in old age homes, there are people who are not feeling well, there are people who slept through the thing because they're on medication, whatever anomalies that you have in the greater community always has these types of cases that come up, and you go now to a city or you have a situation that the majority have accepted Shabbat over there. Is it mutar to blow shofar for him or not? And the general rule would be that it's still mutar to blow shofar for this individual. Again, these are questions that every yachid should ask if they have them. Again, this year would be a very similar scenario. Now, if you are traveling to places that there's only one Chabad there, that's the only minyan. This happens all the time nowadays because people are traveling during summer, during the vacation time, or Chol HaMoed, whatever it is, and oftentimes you find yourself in a place that has only one minyan. So we are not used to this because we are, Baruch Hashem, in a large city with dozens and dozens of minyanim. So this becomes almost not a question even, because there's always another minyan. So it becomes a question in the poskim if your minyan has accepted, but there's another minyan that you could daven in, you would daven sometimes in, and they have a late minyan. So again, this becomes almost a non-existing question. But once you go out of town, and you are in Yehupitzville too, and there's only one Chabad, one minyan there, and they do early Shabbat, then you are dragged after them, and you cannot decide that I am doing late Shabbat. You can't do that, right? Because now you're in this town, and you will be following the Kabbalat Shabbat of the majority of that place, which is this all one minyan that's accepting Shabbat early, because the majority of the tzibur are davening within that minyan, and when they accept Shabbat, the rov of the people have already accepted Shabbat in that place, and the mi'ut are nigrar, they are drawn after the rov, right? Fine. So if you have, again, vacation places that they daven with plag, they do mamash early mincha arvit, and the majority of the sibur that are shomer Torah mitzvot, they're not coming to Bet Knesset because it's far. There's one minyan, there are many people who are shomer Shabbat, but they come Shabbat morning, right? This is, again, I could think of places right now on top of my head that it's like this. So Shabbat morning, you have like 100, 150 people, they're all Shomer Shabbat, they're coming to shul. But Friday night, they're not coming. They're either daven b'yahid at home because they can't walk an hour and a half each way, both on Friday night and on Shabbat morning. So they come to shul on Shabbat morning. So in the shul, you have 50 people on Friday night, but the 100 people who are going to be there tomorrow, they're still keeping Shabbat, they're just at home. In that case, that they're davening at home, they are not drawn after the minority that's in the shul. The fact that the shul is an official minyan, that doesn't mean anything, because still the majority of the Shomer Torah mitzvot people are not coming to shul, and they're not doing early minyan, they're doing late. So therefore, in that case, Chacham Ovadia is a psak from Chacham Ovadia that was printed in the Yarchon Or Torah, that he held that they're not drawn after. So again, we're giving examples to show you that this is a very colorful sugya, a lot of questions and answers that are there to be discussed, even though that's a very short Seif in Shulchan Aruch, but it has a lot of hashlachot ma'asiyot, a lot of practical examples of scenarios that could be one way or another based on very small details that are in every scenario. We'll end it up over here, but Zat Hashem will pick up Seif Yud Gimel in the days to come.